Hi, everyone, and welcome to this breakout session, Effective Community Collaboration, How to Achieve Success, Save Time and Money, and Keep People Happy. My name is Ben Young, and I'm a board member of the EDA, and I would like to thank Redpoint Media Marketing Group for sponsoring today's session. At this time, I would like to ask Anita McGillis, Business Development Specialist, to say a few words about Redpoint Media Marketing Group and to introduce the amazing speaker we have lined up for you today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anita McGillis, and I am with Redpoint Media Group in the role of Business Development, and I'm also Manager of Client Relations in our Custom Publishing Division. It truly has been my pleasure to work and collaborate with the EDA staff and all of you, their members, on the Invest in Alberta Experience Alberta publication. If you're at all wondering why we produce a magazine, well, quite simply, the answer is we provide a means to reach the business and investor audiences, making them aware of the amazing economic opportunities in Alberta in the variety of industry sectors we have here. That reach is really difficult through digital platforms. The magazine helps us share your stories of ingenuity, of resilience, and success. We help build audiences and communities around the world. And on behalf of everyone at Redpoint Media, we thank you for allowing us the opportunity to work with you on this project. It is now my pleasure to introduce to all of you our next speaker, Charmaine Hammond. She is CEO and founder of Hammond International Inc., who is an expert in conflict resolutions. Charmaine helps business owners, human resource professionals, leaders deal with conflict, difficult conversations, and other people issues in the workplace. For more than 2 decades, Charmaine has been building respectful and resilient workplace cultures with her clients in government and energy, companies in health, engineering, safety, technology. She's worked in educational institutions with the police and fire and rescue, nonprofit organizations, and honestly, everything in between. Her extensive background in corporate, small business, government, and nonprofit worlds give her an interesting perspective on being on all sides of the collaboration table. As a public speaker, consultant, and facilitator, Charmaine has worked with thousands of clients and audiences worldwide, teaching business owners, leaders, and frontline staff how to effectively deal with everyday challenges. Challenges including building a respectful workplace, leading and working on multi-generational teams, dealing with change and workplace conflict, resolving conflicts that just won't go away, and helping leaders inspire the best performance from their team to improve results. She is respected for her ability to engage people, to get results, and to transform workplaces through her proven methods and systems and unique team building charter. Charmaine has a master's degree in conflict analysis and management and has owned her business for over 19 years. She has won several business awards and is the author of several books, including Bounce Forward, Building Inspired, Resilient Teams. She's co-author of GPS Your Best Life and her latest book, Building a Respectful Workplace. Charmaine, we welcome you this afternoon to the EDA Experience Alberta Conference, and given the state of affairs here and around the world, we truly are looking forward to your session on effective community collaboration, how to achieve success, save money and time, and how to keep people happy.
Well, thank you so much, Ben and Anita, and big thanks to Redpoint Media and Marketing for being the sponsor of this presentation. And we're talking about collaboration, the power of collaboration, and the results that can happen when people with a similar goal, vision, or deliverables that they want to meet come together to make a big difference. When we talk about collaboration, it means many things to many people. I've learned this. I've worked on hundreds of projects that involve collaboration and diverse stakeholders coming together. And what I have discovered is that people view collaboration differently. People have had different experiences with collaboration. You might have had an experience with a collaboration or a partnership or a project that involved a number of stakeholders, and that project or collaboration went great. It was seamless for the most part. It produced great results. You might have also had the other experience where you've been a part of a collaboration or a partnership type approach to a project, and it was bumpy and messy and constantly went sideways. The goals were unclear and people were in conflict. Those are the kind of projects that we want to help right. And today I'm going to talk about effective collaboration in communities, how to achieve success, save time, save money, and keep people happy so the project keeps rolling. I've worked in the area of collaboration for many, many years, and my first career was actually in the correctional system. I was a jail guard, and you can believe it that collaboration is incredibly important in that type of environment for safety, for getting the job done, for creating an environment of cooperation, and for helping inmates be able to move forward after incarceration. So I learned a lot about collaboration in that career, but it was really when I left corrections and became a mediator. I went back to school, got a master's degree in conflict and management analysis and management because I loved conflict so much, I guess. And I opened up a dispute resolution practice. And what I found fascinating from that work, and by that work, I mean, I had the opportunity to negotiate and facilitate the resolution of family conflicts and workplace conflicts. But what I really enjoyed was the opportunities to work with community groups and partnerships and multi-stakeholder groups to help them create collaborative agreements that would help them and support them in collaborating effectively, but also facilitating the resolution of issues when things went sideways. And I loved that work, learned so much from the municipalities, the government, the businesses, and the nonprofits that I worked with. But the one takeaway I had from all of that was that great things happen when a problem, a need, creative thinkers, and a passionate group of doers come together and connect. Great things happen when all those ingredients are in place. When I talk about collaboration, I'm really thinking of it being two or more people who are working together towards shared goals. There's a shared vision. Maybe there is a defined purpose for that collaboration. An example of that is some of the work that I've done with joint use agreements or with ICF agreements with municipalities, intermunicipal collaboration framework agreements. And these were great examples of community partners, municipal government coming together to look at how resources would be shared and how services would be delivered collaboratively. Getting there isn't always easy. In collaboration and negotiations, there's a lot of things at play. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of reasons why things can go sideways. And in today's topic, we're going to cover what some of those essentials are for collaboration and what can be put in place to prevent things from going sideways. As we start to talk about this, I'd love for you to imagine a collaboration that you were a part of. So something that you're familiar with, you were a part of it, or maybe you oversaw this collaboration or project. Maybe you were one of the participants. Perhaps you were the beneficiary of the collaboration. You were the end user of the collaboration. So think for a moment, what made that collaboration work? If it was one that had good results, what made it work? Where did you see challenges? Where did things get bumpy, messy, go sideways? What created those challenges? What was at play there? Think about where collaboration currently, right now, today, fits into your organization, the way that your team works. How does collaboration fit into service delivery and into the greater community that you're a part of? There's a lot that we can learn from collaborations. And as I share today this topic, I'm also going to share some examples of collaborations that I've had the opportunity to either directly be involved with or be involved more on a peripheral way. One of the first opportunities I had when I was working for the provincial government, and I was in Northern Alberta in Fort McMurray, I was working for health. And at the hospital where I had been divested to, I was one of the leaders in the psychiatry department. And we had an issue to be resolved. We had a lot of are mental health consumers that were coming to the emergency department generally late at night or on the weekends. And as we started to talk with the triage nurses and with the ER staff, we discovered that many of these individuals were not coming to emergency with mental health issues that needed emergent attention or with physical health issues that needed emergent attending to. We discovered that the emergency department was a place where caring people were. And when some of these consumers, our clients, were lonely, they would go to Emerge. I had the wonderful opportunity to be part of and to lead a collaboration within health services in the greater community to solve this issue. How can we make sure that the needs of these clients are best managed and that the resources of the emergency department are best managed? And what was created was an incredible program that really didn't have any budget implications, but what it did have was a much better way to serve clients in our community after hours. And we created the After Hours Mobile Crisis Mental Health Team. What we discovered through all of this resourcing and researching was that on the psychiatry unit, we had these incredibly trained nurses, psychiatry nurses, and other professionals that could be dispatched down to emergency when a consumer would show up on the weekend or after hours. What this allowed us to do was to actually deal with the issues of the clients effectively and make best use of the resources of the hospital. But what also happened is we identified the other community partners, organizations and nonprofits and other levels of government that could play a role in this. And the outcomes were incredible. That was one of my first examples of bringing together a diverse population. What really made this work, though, was that we included the individuals with lived experience to provide their explanation, their needs, the information that they wanted us to know and understand so that it could be considered in the process. When we think about collaboration, it's really important to think about what made it work, what are the challenges that you might face, and what needs to be in place to hold the agreement. So many times, a good collaboration falls apart because a key player leaves. You've probably seen this. You've been on a committee, a stakeholder working group. Things are moving along great. Goals are getting accomplished, and a key player leaves. They change to another department. They go on some kind of leave, or they move from the community, or their organization can no longer participate, and things stall, sometimes stop. And one of the things that needs to be in place is a collaboration agreement, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. When you think about collaboration and how it makes good sense, I know this to be true. When elected officials, when staff from municipalities, when community partners, organizations, nonprofit groups, and foundations all understand the principles and the foundations of collaboration, how it works, what makes it work, and they master the skills that are necessary and have the tools to ensure that the collaboration works. What I know to happen is that when all of those ingredients are in place, communities are much more resilient, they are viable, and they're sustainable. I've now had the opportunity to work with more than 65 municipalities across Canada. I've facilitated many joint use agreements, shared use agreements, ICFs, and I was a facilitator on a large provincial project, FICE, First Impressions Community Exchange Projects, as well as facilitating public partnerships and more. Collaboration just makes good business sense. It really helps set businesses up to be a business for good. So before I get into a couple of other case studies, I just wanted to share an interesting survey that was done by Salesforce. They have surveyed more than 1,400 corporate executives, employees, and educators. And what the survey revealed was that they found more than 86% of the participants that participated in the survey believed that a lack of collaboration was responsible for the failures in their workplace. 86% were saying the failures in our workplace are largely due to a lack of collaboration. Where does collaboration start? It starts with how we show up in our own lives, how we collaborate with our family, in our relationships and in our community, and then it moves into the workplace. How do we collaborate in our team? How do we foster collaboration on the projects that we work on? With all the work that I've done in collaboration, I started to look at, with all the projects I've worked on over the last 25 years, what were some of the elements that existed in all of the projects that had great success from a collaboration perspective, even if at times things got bumpy and messy? What were those elements? What was the blueprint for success? Here's what I found. Relationships, number one. Every collaboration that I looked at, that I had the chance to be a part of, when it was successful, part of the reason was that there were strong relationships. That doesn't mean that there wasn't conflict or disagreement, but the relationships were built on a foundation of respect, trust, and engagement. And even in tough times, the collaboration could continue to move forward because those relationships existed. Now, some of the collaborations that I've been a part of in many different ways also had key people leave. I talked about that a moment ago. And what ensured that the collaboration was not jeopardized, the work of that group was not jeopardized, was a partnership agreement or a collaboration agreement. If anyone's looking for what does that agreement look like, I'm happy to share examples with you. But essentially, the collaboration agreements that I have found really serve as the glue to a partnership or a collaborative approach, outlines the purpose of this collaboration. What is this group here to do? What is the purpose? Why does this collaboration or project exist? What are the roles? What is the decision-making structure? How is this collaboration being funded? So who is bringing what to the table? This is really important to include. And I'll give you a case study on this later. The other elements that these agreements, these were written, signed agreements, they also included this piece. What's going to happen if a disagreement occurs within this collaborative project or within the people that are part of this collaboration? And we can learn a lot from the construction industry. They often use a process called partnering. They decide in advance how conflicts and disagreements are going to be managed. That way, if something gets clunky or bumpy or goes sideways or there's a disagreement, people know in advance what to expect, what their role in resolution is, and how it's going to be addressed. And this is really a strong element of maintaining trust within that relationship. So that was one of the elements for collaboration and that blueprint for success. Right up on the heels of that, of relationships, was communication. All of the collaborations that I saw that achieved their goals and then some, and that were able to, even with challenging times, work well together, they had communication plans. So they agreed in advance how they were going to communicate, what the communication needs were, what each person's responsibility was on communication, who is the spokesperson for the group if there is one, and the ability to talk about issues and present your perspectives, even if they differ from the rest of the people around the table, having an open environment where people can communicate transparently, authentically, and where their perspective is welcomed. Trust, I've already talked to, is another blueprint for success element. Another element for collaborations to work is that we've got to have clearly defined roles. When I was a mediator, many of the mediations that I facilitated on collaborative projects or partnerships that had gone sideways, when you dug deep into the issues, defined roles was one of the challenges. There just wasn't clarity on who played what role and why. And these role confusions would sort of come up and be combative or conflicting. So make sure in your collaborations that the roles of the people and the roles of the organization, business, or nonprofit that they represent are clearly defined. And make sure you update these agreements. Often what happens is there's a collaboration agreement, and then things change, and everyone around the table knows that things change because they were part of the change. And then a new player comes in, and they're looking at the collaboration agreement and how the group is currently working together, and it's not the same. Part of how we maximize time, efficiency, keep relationships strong and healthy, and keep people happy is having clearly defined roles and updating agreements as we go. We talked about the next one, which is having an agreed upon in advance way of working together. I am a big fan of team charters and project charters. In fact, I do this a lot. I facilitate in workplaces and collaborative groups the process of developing a team charter. A team charter is really, how are we going to work together? This is sort of the nuts and bolts, the people part of a collaboration. It's a very powerful process to go through and helps people stay together and work together better. Communication is so important. You'll see that on the slide yet another time. This is honestly I would say in all of the mediations I did over the years and all of the times that I was a participant in a collaboration, where things would get frustrating was when it came down to communication. Some of the partnerships that I was a member of or a partner of had great conflict resolution processes spelled right into how we work together, and that was really valuable. So these are some of the blueprints for success. There's also 3 key mistakes that I see all the time with collaborations, and as a mediator, these were some of the reasons why collaborations would end up in mediation, or why partnership projects would end up in mediation. One of them was the wrong fit. What I mean by that is often we have great intentions as an organization who is the leader of some project or community collaborative initiative. And we choose people either for the wrong reasons, or we choose the wrong groups and organizations to participate on the project. And the challenge with that is that it will just create a number of difficulties throughout the whole collaborative process. We want to choose our collaboration partners well. Wherever possible, it's critically important to look at the fact that collaborations will work best when there's not only vested interest in the outcome, but there's shared values. This is really important. So really take stock of who is participating in this collaboration. Why are they participating? What are their values? Make sure that you have the right people around the table. The second mistake that I see a lot is that a group of people with a great idea come together, but frustration sets in early on. And part of that is because there's no goal, no plan, no process. And I hear all the time people saying things like, oh man, this project is just not moving forward. I feel like we're on the same agenda item that we were on 6 months ago. It feels like we're just not getting momentum. A solution to this can be have some clearly defined goals that everyone around the table believes in and that they're also going to champion and get behind. Have a plan, create a plan, have a process, document this, look at it frequently. One of the collaborative projects that I was a part of and I was a facilitator for was with municipal government and some local nonprofit organizations. And I loved what they created. We had a brainstorming process to look at how could we keep the goal, the plan, and the process top of mind for this group so that it was there in front of them every time they met. And they used to meet, I think it was twice a month. So it was a fairly active working group, very diverse in terms of the stakeholders. And what one of them did for one of the meetings, I thought was great. They had those little tent cards that you had your name that faced outwards. On the side that faced me, the individual who was on the team created this sticker that got placed on the tent card, and it had the goal, 3 elements of the plan, and the group's values. And so as I was looking at my tent card, it was right there in front of me all the time. I just thought that was a great way to keep it top of mind and to keep people connected to why this group and this collaboration existed in the first place. So have a goal, have a plan, have the purpose, and make sure people agree to it and that they are comfortable with it. Mistake number 3 is communication is handled poorly or it doesn't exist in the first place. People will tolerate a lot in a partnership when they see movement, when they see traction, when they see people's time and commitment and their contributions being recognized or utilized. But when communication is non-existent or handled poorly, people's tolerance level goes down very quickly. It is really important to look at the communication that happens around the table in a collaboration and that happens externally. One of the projects that I was involved in was an ICF project, Intermunicipal Collaboration Framework Agreement. And as the partners around the table would end their meeting, they would agree together what communication would be released to their own organization. They'd also agree, and they would actually write this together, what information would be released to the community, and then what information would be released, if any, to media. And this is a great way of, again, fostering collaboration into how this group communicates messages, updates, celebrations. So communication is key. The other piece I'll add with communication is that issues around communication, for example, conflict, needs to be handled not only effectively, but quickly. One of my favorite quotes is by Judge Esty, and I don't know who Judge Esty is, by the way, but I came across this quote and I just think it sums it up. Judge Esty says this about conflict. Conflict is not like wine. Conflict is not like wine. It does not get better with age. Conflict is like going for a walk with a little tiny pebble in your shoe. Think about that. How many times have you been out for a hike or out for a walk and you've got, you know, a granular piece of a stone or pebble or something irritating in your shoe, and you don't remove it? By the time you finish that walk, it feels like a boulder inside your shoe. All you can think about is how much your foot hurts or how irritating that boulder, that little pebble is. And that's the same thing that happens with communication and conflict as it relates to teams and as it relates to collaboration. So handle it quickly, handle it effectively, make sure there's no residue. By residue, I mean, make sure that when the issue is resolved, it is complete. There is no open ends. Loop back and make sure that people are, I'm using air quotes, okay after the conversation. Conflict is very costly, not only in terms of relationships and stress, but in terms of dollars. It's very costly, so handle it effectively. So the solution to all of these mistakes, and specifically the 3 mistakes that I just spoke to now, I'll start with C. So my solutions for collaborating to succeed, the strategies, all start with C. The first one is having clarity. Having clarity. That is clarity in your goal, your vision, clarity in the collaboration agreement that you create for people to sign, clarity in your commitments, clarity in your outbound messaging. I'm going to share an example right now from Jasper, actually. This is an oldie but a goodie. Many, many years ago, I was the Community Partnership Enhancement Facilitator for Northern Alberta. This was a partnership between the province and the municipality, and the partnership expanded to include many of their nonprofit stakeholders in the region, as well as the organizations that both the province and the municipality partnered with for service delivery to families and children. And when I was doing research in this role as the Community Partnership Enhancement Facilitator, I came across a fantastic model and made the trip down the highway to Jasper to go and speak to FCSS, who was the sort of host, the spokesperson for this project. And they introduced it to me as the drop in the bucket. And this is many years ago, but I still remember it because it was probably the most powerful example of what happens when people who are committed come to the table to solve a community issue, even where resources might be slim. So how this was explained to me was that there were some needs in the community at that time as it related to youth and teens and children, and being able to have programming and service delivery, especially after hours. And when they started to look at the different stakeholders and organizations in the community, they discovered that many times government departments or nonprofit organizations or groups might have a small amount of funding, a 0.5 of an FTE, a 0.2, a 0.75, a 0.4. And individually, that funding or that point whatever of an FTE was not enough to make an impact or deliver a service. But what happens if you put them all in a room and they shared their drops in the bucket? And what I mean by drops in the bucket, each of those contributions was considered like a drop in the bucket. Collectively, there was a lot of resources that could go together to solve the community's needs at that time. They had a great example of a collaboration agreement. They had structures, processes, a plan. They communicated, they had the right people around the table. But this is a great opportunity for us to look at this in our own communities, in our own workplaces, and in the projects that we participate in. Who are those drops in the bucket that we could engage? What drops in the bucket could they contribute to an outcome that we could never achieve on our own? Another 7 C's for collaboration is creativity and critical thinking. Creativity and critical thinking is so important in collaboration because often we face hurdles, challenges, or new issues that emerge that have to be solved in the moment. And when you bring together committed people with diverse agendas in the same room and foster creative thinking and critical thinking, the solutions that you can come up with are often more incredible than what would have happened if people tried to tackle that issue separately. Another C for collaboration is courage. We have to have people who have courage to be bold, who have courage to be able to stand behind the agreements that the partners in this collaboration make together. Courage to step into new territory. There's a lot of learning that happens on collaborative and partnership projects. And another one is commitment. We have to be committed. One of the reasons why collaborative projects fail and why people get frustrated and leave good projects is because there isn't commitment from the stakeholders. And sometimes we have to have the difficult conversation, what I call the courageous dialogue. And if people are not committed to the partnership that they signed up for, maybe it needs to be somebody else who can be at the table. Maybe they weren't the right fit in the first place, but it's really important to address commitment issues as they arise and as they surface. Now, the other 3 remaining C's are compassion, conflict resolution, and communication. Very, very important for making sure that the collaboration works. I want to take these now to look at some other examples of collaboration and how do they foster in creative thinking or critical thinking, relationships, trust. How did they factor in communication? How did they factor in bringing people together with diverse needs, shared and lived experience to solve issues? Well, one of them I actually experienced in Vancouver. I live in North Vancouver, and we ride our bike frequently over to West Vancouver for coffee. And we went for coffee to one of our favorite places, and I was hungry. It was lunchtime, and they didn't really have much at this coffee shop other than baked goods and chocolate. And I actually wanted sort of a meal, some soup or sandwich. And I asked them if they had soup or sandwich, and they said, we don't, but we have the coolest partnership. We've partnered with the butcher 2 doors down, and we can offer you an amazing range of not only sandwiches, deli sandwiches, but some salads. So they brought out a menu that was the butcher's menu. Both of them had their logos at the top. And I ordered my sandwich. And not long after, somebody came running down the street with my sandwich. And then I also heard the person say, when they came in, we need 4 lattes, and they gave all the special types of lattes that were needed. The individual waited, then brought the lattes down the street to the butcher shop for the people that wanted a latte to go when they were ordering whatever they were ordering. And I talked to the staff that were working that day, and I said, this is an example of businesses partnering. And she said, well, we just got talking as neighbors, and they kept saying, geez, we're thinking of selling coffee. And then we started thinking, oh, we might have to expand our food menu. And then the light bulb went on. And rather than creating a whole new business model and having to buy new equipment and train staff on something that they weren't familiar with, like making sandwiches or making lattes, they said, why don't we just partner? And they've been doing that ever since. It's a great example of partnering to meet the needs of the community or the clients. The challenge is always this: where could you, in your community, in your workplace, where could you expand the opportunities and possibilities to partner with nonprofit organizations, with other businesses, with social enterprises, with organizations and government? There's many, many ways for innovative type collaborations to happen. Let's talk about a couple other case studies. One of them I love is a business out of Toronto called Good Food for Good. And I actually found them on LinkedIn one day, reading an article or a post about the fact that at that time they had donated 285,000 plus meals in their community. And of course, I got intrigued because I love good stories, and I continued reading. And I learned that Good Food for Good, who has these incredible brands of hot sauce and sauce, which is all healthy, by the way, they had created a business for good model that when somebody bought a jar of the sauce, Good Food for Good would actually donate a meal. And their quote is, every time you buy a Good Food for Good product, we donate a meal to feed someone in need. Good for you, good for the planet, and good for someone in need. They've partnered with some of the organizations in their community to make this happen. So at the time I was reading this, 285,000 meals donated. It was a different way of doing business and a way of engaging a nonprofit organization to do good together. Now, another case study I'm going to talk about is a group that I'm very familiar with, and I've actually partnered with on a number of projects. And the group is called the Earth Group, and Matt and Corey are the owners, the founders of the Earth Group, which is located in Edmonton. And they exist to provide food, water, and education to children globally. And they do this through worldwide agreements that they have in place with one of their partners, who is the United Nations World Food Program, United Nations World Food Program. And they donate 100%. So the Earth Group donates 100% of their profits to that organization to be able to fund school meal programs, and they have fed millions of people. The partnership is not only, though, with the United Nations World Food Program, they also partner with local organizations. So the impact is also local, not just global. So they have partnerships locally, regionally, and globally. They believe, this is coming from their website, they believe it's more important around how you spend your dollars than how you vote or how you created a vehicle to affect positive change in the world simply through your everyday purchases. So they really believe that people coming together to make a difference together on local, regional, and global issues is what will make a big difference in the world. Well, what was really interesting is I was presenting at a conference in Grand Prairie and happened to mention to Matt from the Earth Group that I was going to be using his case study in my presentation. And he said, "Oh, Charmaine," he said, "I have another example of collaboration at its finest." He said, the airport in Grand Prairie was the first to come on board when we released our water in aluminum cans. And so I had the opportunity to interview the gentleman from the Grand Prairie Airport. But again, it was an opportunity to understand why they said yes and what this collaboration looked like. So think about the ways that you do business currently, and where could collaboration play a role to create an impact bigger than the one that you imagined in the first place. And if you're looking at partnerships globally, like for example, the Earth Group, they have partnerships that are global. They also have partnerships and projects that are close to home to support people in need. So your partnerships and your collaborations can be close to home, local, regional, provincial, and beyond. A couple of other case studies as we pull this together. One of the groups that I worked with many years ago was a nonprofit organization, and they had a crisis line. And the crisis line was consuming a lot of staff time because they didn't have enough volunteers. And the crisis line was a very, very important part of this particular community. And they needed to find a solution. Because the staff at this organization were having to man the crisis lines, it was really, really tapping out the budget of this organization. People had building amounts of lieu time. And then, of course, when they took time off in lieu, somebody else was being paid to cover the lines. And they just struggled to get volunteers, or volunteers that could cover the lines essentially 24 hours a day. And the executive director at the time happened to be talking to the executive director of a family violence crisis facility, who also has a crisis line that operates 24 hours a day. And they were talking about some of the challenges with running crisis lines, and wouldn't it be great if, that creative thinking we talked about. And when they started sharing some of their challenges and needs together, and what I love about this story is there was no competition. They both actually probably approached the same funders. They have a lot of the same government funders and local and regional municipal funders, but there was no element of competition. Their goal was, how do we help people in our community? And they created a working agreement together that when my client, the one nonprofit organization, was in staff meetings or when it was after hours, they would flip the lines over to the Family Crisis Center, who would then man the lines. They would cover the crisis lines, and then they would go back over to the organization. All of their staff in both organizations had the same training, the same skill set. This was easy. It actually brought two organizations closer together. The way in which people were served was increased and advanced. No funding was impacted. In fact, there was no funding needed. And at the end of the day, two organizations got to make even a bigger difference together, and their teams started to work together on other projects. So a great example of what can happen when organizations, government, businesses are open-minded and look at collaboration as the solution to some of the problems. The key is always, How do we make sure that we save time, money, energy, and keep people happy in the process? So as we pull this together, the question I would like to ask you all is, how has collaboration helped you in your community build a more resilient community, a resilient workplace? And how has collaboration so far been able to help you achieve the outcomes and the results that you could never, as an organization or individual, have achieved alone? And my parting thought is a quote I love by Mr. Rogers. I grew up watching Mr. Rogers, and he talks about the helpers. And his quote was something to the effect of, when I hear things in the news, when there's troubling situations going on around the world, just look for the helpers. Helpers are everywhere. Collaboration is really an opportunity to bring people together, to make a difference, to solve tough and complex issues, to create better results. Thank you so much. I'm Charmaine Hammond. I look forward to the Q&A part. And again, big special thanks to Ben, Anita, and to Redpoint Media and Marketing for supporting this talk.
Thank you so much, Charmaine, for that fantastic presentation, and a big thank you again to Redpoint Media Marketing Group for sponsoring this session. At this time, I would like to invite you all to join us for a live Zoom Q&A. All you have to do is click on the link on your screen, and we'll see you there.